Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a few questions for the proponent of the bill, ma'am.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So this is a very interesting bill, and it's a bill that I'd like to kind of just say that when it first came before appropriations, there were some concerns with some of the pieces that were in it, and something that we mention a lot here on the floor, which is picking winners and losers. And I would just like to thank the good Representative Paris for listening to those concerns and working with us on the other side of the aisle to really try to hone this bill in and make it applicable to as many people as we can. As we all know, there's a massive shortage of employees in this state. There's a large shortage in tradesmen, there's shortage in nurses, there's shortage in teachers, there's all these different shortages that we have, and trying to find ways to keep people in the state of Connecticut is difficult with the cost of living in Connecticut, and that's a much bigger conversation that we need to have at some point going forward. But for now, trying to find a way to keep these new young graduates staying here in the state is something that is of utmost importance to both sides of the aisle. And in doing that, when we first started to review this bill, we looked at how can we make this applicable and something that we can get full bipartisan support on, like people who really are trying to accomplish that, and looking at not just giving a handout of paying off people's student loans, but getting people invested in Connecticut. And this was the best compromise that we found. So just for clarification purposes, so people understand, to the good proponent of the bill, does this bill limit who can apply for this student loan forgiveness? Is it just certain professions? Is it available to tradesmen? What is the benefit of this plan that we haven't seen yet here in the legislature, ma'am, through you?
Representative Paris.
Through you, Madam Speaker, anyone with this amendment will be able to apply for this program and would receive reimbursement. That would be anyone who obviously has a certification from a trades program or a bachelor degree from a Connecticut state, public, or private institution. Through you.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you. And we talked a little bit about the requirements for this, so I'd like to kind of just review and reiterate those and just get confirmation. In order to apply for this program, you have to be a state of Connecticut resident, and you have to have been a state of Connecticut resident for at least 5 years. And you will have to recertify that every year, ma'am. Is that correct? Through you.
Representative Paris.
Through you, Madam Speaker, that is correct. You will have to have been a Connecticut state resident for at least 5 years, and in addition to that, a working professional for two years. Through you.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you. And then in regard to the obligation for the community service, is that something that you're going to have to do every year? Is that just a do 50 hours and you're done for the entire length of the program, or every year you have to invest in the community and do 50 hours of unpaid community service, ma'am? Through you.
Representative Paris.
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes, you will have to complete those 50 hours of community service every single year, and also you have to recertify, improve eligibility every single year. It's a good way for people to stay involved with their communities, as stated before, and also may find ways to help fill certain workforce shortages in our community and in our state. Through you.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, ma'am. And this grant money back as we look at this, is it something that you're just going to get automatically, or do you have to, as the representative intoned, do you have to pay your student loans throughout the year, and at the end you submit receipts to prove that you have a student loan in good standing and you've made these payments, and then based on those receipts you will be issued up to $5,000 reimbursement after you've stayed here for the 5 + 2 years and the current year for which you're applying. So this is a pay and then get the incentive at the end of the year. Is that correct, ma'am? Through you.
Representative Paris.
Through you, Madam Speaker, that is correct. You have to pay on your student loan, submit those receipts, and after the submission of those receipts, you will then receive the reimbursement from the Office of Higher Education for up to $5,000. It does not mean that everyone would need to take the $5,000, but whatever they have paid and submitted would be the amount that they would receive in the reimbursement. Through you.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, ma'am. And can you please verify that you will have had to have graduated with at least one of your degrees from a local state of Connecticut college, public or private, or be a current holder of a Connecticut license or certificate for your job, ma'am, through you?
Representative Paris.
Through you, Madam Speaker, that is correct. You would have to have graduated from a school as outlined in the bill or have left in good standing. Through you.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, ma'am. And the last thing is what is the maximum amount you can get in reimbursement over the lifetime of this program, ma'am, through you?
Representative Paris.
Through you, Madam Speaker, the maximum amount eligible for those borrowers who are eligible for the program is $20,000 with a 4-year cap for 4 years. The $20,000 is the cap, so it's up to $5,000 each year. Through you.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you very much. And again, I would just like to say I stand in support of this bill, of this amendment. Nobody loves the idea of just wiping off student debt, right? We don't. A lot of people just don't feel that. I paid mine, my kids paid theirs, et cetera, et cetera. And this bill does not look to just wipe out student debt, which I think is a really big thing to point out here. What this is doing is asking people to invest in Connecticut, to stay in Connecticut after they go to school here. It's asking people to establish roots. If you are going to be in this program, you have to be a resident of the state, you have to maintain that residency, you have to maintain a job, you have to show that you are paying your student loans, you're doing all of these things. Ideally, I would love to see employers offer something like this. And I think we have to work toward that. I think we are working toward that. But in the meantime, as a stopgap for the next 4 years to try to get people to stay and reinvest in Connecticut, I think it's important that the state just does what it can to try to incent that. And I think this is the least offensive way of doing that. And it's definitely something that I and lots of other people in the Appropriations Committee on both sides of the aisle felt this was worthy to do. So I just would like to thank the representative, thank him for working collaboratively, truly bipartisan across the board, listening to the concerns all of my members had in Appropes, and coming up with an amendment that we could all very proudly get behind. Thank you, ma'am.
Representative Zullo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good to see you, as always. I just have to tell you, I cannot believe we are even having this debate. Again, I will say it one more time for another year in a row. Student loan debt is crippling. Crippling. I have friends who can't buy a house because of their student loans. I have friends who can't afford childcare because of their student loans. And to the good and slightly ironic point of my good colleague who just spoke, it's not because of avocado toast or lattes or the sneakers they're buying. It is because of crushing student loans. This is one of the most meaningful pieces of legislation that I have seen since I came here in 2019 to help people deal with crippling student loans. I understand some of my colleagues have issues with parts of it. I totally respect those opinions. But if we don't start getting serious about helping young people tackle student loan debt, we will not keep people in this state. We will not solve the upward mobility problem that millennials and everybody, all young people, are trying to overcome. And we will not be able to move this state forward. I wholeheartely support this proposal and hope everybody will join me in doing so for our young people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I think that's a key to this, and that would put me over the top in voting for this, because I think the travesty that's gone on throughout the country is not pushing more kids to go through trades and actually looking down on the tradesmen. I truly believe one of my children should have gone through trade school. He ended up going to the University of Utah, and I think he would have been better served going to a trade school. But it was his choice, and we supported that choice. My wife and I worked 2 jobs so that he could make that choice to go to school. So I am very apprehensive about giving people a break for making bad choices. However, in this scenario, this is a reimbursement essentially for not only tradesmen but also those that go to a state college. It encourages our our kids to go to school in state and rewards them if they give back and stay here. So with that being said, there is as I understand it, one last question. As I understand that there's a fiscal note of there's roughly $6 million in the budget, first come, first serve. Is that correct through you, Madam Speaker?
Representative Paris.
Through you, Madam Speaker, that is correct. Through you.
Representative O'Day.
So my colleague from the 23rd had talked about opening it up to others that went outside of the state of Connecticut. I'm not in favor of that because taxpayer dollars are limited. They're not unlimited. And so I agree with the philosophy or the policy of only reimbursing those that went to a state school or trade school. So with that, I stand. I'm going to listen to the rest of the argument. I want to thank the good proponent for reaching across the aisle, listening to our concerns and addressing all those concerns. And if anybody here is listening, I think one thing that you're going to hear from me all throughout, if you listen and change legislation to address our concerns, you got a good shot at getting a lot of green. So thank you very much. Appreciate the good proponent. And thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Vertigliano, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wasn't intending on speaking on this bill today because, I heard it in the propes and I understood the premise of the bill. And I wanted to thank the good representative because he came with the proposal and then he adjusted with input. I actually think this is a great bill. I don't look at this as student loan forgiveness. I really don't. I really, when I first heard the proposal, when I first read through the legislation, because I wouldn't support out-of-hand student loan forgiveness, but this is more of a learn here, live here. This is something that we've all been proposing in a bipartisan way for quite some time. The requirements to receive this forgiveness or receive these monies really depends on whether or not you're here. It's in a Connecticut college, you have to live in Connecticut, you have to work in Connecticut, and the fact that it's now extended beyond the universities to trade schools, I think is just an added benefit. So I think I fully support this. I'm a co-sponsor of this bill. I think it's a great idea. I think it's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So thank you, Madam Speaker.